So, but what a year, huh? So, for people who don't know, you observe Chestertown from Water Street, looking over the Chester River as well as downtown. What's your general sense of things right now?
The main theme of this year certainly is the pandemic, but it's in convergence with social justice movement. And those two together have their own alchemy. And in a way, I think that there are two sets of frontline workers. We're dealing with the pandemic economically. How do you adjust business according to shutdowns and survive through that, et cetera? And on the other hand, at the same time, with the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, that really triggered there was a resonance in the community to step up and take a look at Chestertown legacy as far as our history of racism as a royal port and slavery, et cetera. And so I think it's become an incredibly reflective moment for the community. And it fans out into a whole kind of network of interesting takes on it. For instance, while the town council struggled with, how to identify and work with the idea that Chestertown is uniting against racism, which is the key phrase that they use. How do you install that into policy, et cetera? And it was a long haul, trying to define that from Ellsworth Tolliver's first resolution, which I think was really a keynote involved in all of this. It came to pass that as they worked with it a little bit farther, the iterations of trying to set up the HRC, that it eroded a little bit. It became, it lost its voice a little bit, I think. It's not a dead issue by any means. The 16-month plan to work with systemic racism is still in play. And from there, you go to how the town has responded to things like the disenfranchised, the people who can't afford food. And there has been this kind of amazing network of food distributions. Originally, and I hope I'm accurate about this, but through the Social Action Committee for Racial Justice, Arlene Lee and Paul Tu, and not to forget John Queen's involvement with Hoya's and food distribution also. Mm-hmm. And it's ongoing, it's every day. And that's pretty cool. Yeah. So there's been this kind of, really, for a small town, I've seen a lot of positive movement toward addressing some of this.
Do you feel like the shutdown helped or hurt the dialogue on racial justice?
My feeling is that it galvanized it, that things have been so intense with the pandemic that it brings all the dialogue to the surface. And it's a little bit edgier, and I think there's more emotion involved in trying to deal with racial justice. I mean, the mural was really a great thing symbolically, and everybody knows it's a symbol. That's not a standalone, okay, we've done it, we've achieved some kind of parity here. Uh-huh. In a way, and people are still trying to, argue about who it's for, and it's for everybody. It's for us to reflect on and to be reminded of where we're at and how we can deal with our own sense of systemic racism, and it's brought a lot to the fore. I think the two together, the pandemic and the social justice issue, I think in some kind of weird way propelled us to a more kind of a emotional reflection on it.
You know, there was one point where we really didn't know whether the town council would approve the mural, Black Lives Matter, and it was highly suspenseful for quite some time. Was that kind of a breakthrough as well?
I think that their reluctance reflected everybody's reluctance to kind of, how do we deal with this kind of thing? Is it really an issue? And I think there was so much feedback from the community that the council finally had to say, well, yeah, okay, there's really an issue here. And I think Ellsworth Tolliver broke that open with the resolution. And so, yeah.
The other thing that was interesting to note, scary to note, I should say, was as the COVID pandemic started to reach the Eastern Shore, Chestertown in particular got hit by a lot of fatalities in nursing homes. I mean, did you pick up on that anxiety?
I think it scared all of us to realize that the systems that we have, the care systems that we have in place for the elderly are really vulnerable to this. And from my small point of view, it looks as though it was not managed well over there. And I hope that it's a flare in the sky to say, hey, you know, let's really take a look at this in the whole region. Now, our health department here went in strong on this, and I think that there's legal stuff still going on involved in it. But yeah, it was, I think it rang our bell to realize that the pandemic could hit that hard with the vulnerable, and may have set us a little bit closer to being safe in public and wearing masks and social distancing and saying, hey, this is really a serious deal.
It must be said that the pandemic also had major economic impacts on Kent County and Chestertown. What's your sense of how things are going now?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, aside from the early severe shutdowns, and even then, actually, for instance, the restaurants started curbside service almost immediately. And I don't know if that is a survivable way of doing things. And of course, since then, they've opened up more. But Chestertown seems to be pretty nimble in its response to that kind of thing. I know that people want to go into shops and support local business and the galleries too. So they do shop locally, and they want these to succeed. You know, they're key players in that too. Kay McIntosh comes to mind in Main Street in setting up the outdoor dining and shutting off that part of town, which was really a big thing.
Yeah.
Saturday Market continued. And I think her name is Julie King that runs that and runs it well. And they've moved it from Fountain Park to the street, and that's been a raging success. And I think that's been kind of a high keynote for survivability of business. All in all, I don't know what the impact is in the long run because we're still dealing with it. Everywhere you look, we've been touched by the pandemic, from the school system, remote learning, teaching, to our everyday life, to shopping at the grocery store. When do you go? When do you feel safe?
Well, the other thing that you've been awfully good about is documenting the impact COVID has had on the arts and artists. And, you have far more knowledge of literary history than I do, but it just seems like with every war, there was a whole new rush for publishers to get really dramatically radical new stuff out. You see that percolating here?
Yeah, I do. I think what artists are doing is trying to find the language and how to articulate this immense weird year that is, people have lost family members. They've watched the instability of the nation. I think so. I think the key is that there's this urgency to express themselves, and it's coming out in new and various ways from painters to writers.
The other thing that we've always been watching is Washington College. It is my understanding that they will be returning in February, the students.
I think that there's a plan of staggering reentry of students. My kind of curbside observation is that even that is fluid as far as deciding whether or not that's going to happen. I'm not getting a very clear answer. I think it's just because they don't know that everybody's playing it month to month right now. And if we have another big surge of COVID, then it will alter their plans also.
One of the things I asked our friends from and Fuller the other day is, what is your prediction for 2021 with Chestertown? What do you see in a hopefully post-pandemic world?
There's some cool things happening here that I haven't mentioned. One is the amazing new arts building across from the post office. John Schratweiser, head of the Kent Cultural Alliance. All of this, of course, was initiated by our dear Leslie Raymond, who pretty much the queen of the arts around here. That's going to be an interesting thing. And I think that if and when the Garfield opens back up, that the arts movement will, I think, take front and center. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of energy behind it, that people are, waiting to be involved in it. All I know is that underneath it, there's a lot of willingness for volunteerism. There's not a pall over Chestertown. The economics are tough for sure, but underneath it, there's a kind of vigorous feeling that we can take it and we're going to come back. It may not be normal, but it's going to be good. Again, I'm always surprised to find out the different entities and organizations that are out there that I honestly was not aware of. I mean, by name for sure, but not what they did. Rebuilding Together Kent County is one. They brought in a house for a family that could afford something like that. They helped rebuild the schoolhouse out in Wharton, which to me was really kind of an amazing little episode out there. So there are these kinds of groups that with a lot of heart that I keep discovering. So I want to discover more and find out who's out there doing the real work. The food distribution program out at the Legion Hall, I mean, on its surface, it sounds like, okay, yeah, they're delivering food to people in need, elderly, et cetera. But oh my God, when you see it, it's this vast hall of tables of bags of food that are being sorted out there every day. And it's like a factory. That's volunteer work. It's amazing. Well, as you look at Chestertown from your vantage point and your experience here and at Washington College, what is your snapshot of how the town's doing?
Well, it's been interesting to watch, and you probably know this as well, but my opinion is that Chestertown has always gone through some historical cycles. And the good news for Chestertown in 2019, it was hitting all cylinders in terms of kind of sophistication, in terms of outreach and marketing, and really grabbing the arts identity and running with it. And of course, 2020 blew that momentum. But I think, as you were indicating, it's just been tucked away for a little bit. But all those tools and infrastructure will come back alive. You know, probably in the fall, I would say. But you know, that we do see some future. And you know, I think we started the Spy with always the thought that Chestertown had so much going for it. It was surprising that it had stayed off the radar for so long.
Yeah.
And I think those days are going to come to an end in 2021.
Yeah.
James, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Happy